Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hello and welcome to episode 158 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with my elementary director, Lisa Molite, who's been on the podcast before, and we talked all about creating irresistible environments for kids. And in this episode, we talk all about launching a preteen ministry. And this is what we did this year. Earlier this year, we launched a preteen ministry. Now, for us, it was a 4th and 5th grade ministry. A lot of times preteen you think of as 5th, 6th, or something like that. And we talk in the interview about, why we did 4th, 5th, and not 5th, 6th, and all of that. But Lisa talks through everything, our plan and volunteers and what it looked like and the environment and the space, what's unique about that environment compared to like kindergarten through 3rd or even middle school. So you get to hear everything that we did to launch that ministry this year. To get all the links and notes and all those things, just go to nickblevins.com/episode 158. The email exclusive for this podcast is that I'm going to give you my notes about preteens from when we were launching this ministry. And here was the idea. It didn't actually happen. Maybe I'll make it happen here soon. But my idea was I was gathering a bunch of notes about preteens and ministering to them and parenting them and all of that because I wanted to create like a free PDF that we could give to parents in our area through Facebook ads. Like I could use Facebook ads to target parents of preteens, give them this free PDF. Think of it being like something like 5 things to know about your preteen and 5 things you can do to parent them or something like that. Make it super encouraging. Here's 5 interesting, helpful pieces of information, but here's 5 things that you can do as a parent, to connect with your preteen and just make it really encouraging. Let them know that they're doing a great job as parents. It's hard. But anyway, my idea was to create that PDF, give that away to parents in our area through Facebook ads right from our church website so they would see that and we can invite them, to attend church, maybe check out our new preteen ministry. I did not get that to happen. There were so many things going on, as you'll hear in the episode. I never made that resource, but I did collect those notes. And a lot of those notes came from Dan Scott's Caught in Between book. We'll talk about that in the interview. But they came from other things too, like a post that Dan had written for somewhere else that was directed towards parents. And I'll give that to you. Just make sure you're subscribed to my email list. If you're not, you can subscribe at nickblevins.com/episode 158. Something else you can get there is a new resource. I mentioned this in the last episode that I created called Planning Church Events, 15 Best Practices. So if you're like me and you plan a lot of events, you might be interested in checking out that resource, applying that, tweaking it, using it in your ministry as you plan events so that you can kind of minimize frustration and give people a great experience. You can get that at nickblevins.com/events. But let's go ahead now and jump into my conversation with our elementary director, Lisa Molite, to talk all about launching our preteen ministry. Welcome back to the podcast, Lisa. Last time we talked about environments and decor, and now we're talking about preteen ministry. But before we do that, kind of introduce yourself again for anybody who isn't familiar with you or didn't listen to that last episode. Maybe tell us what's going on since you were last on.
Hey, well, thanks for having me back. I am excited to be talking about preteen ministry. A lot's happened since the last time we talked, I guess. We did actually launch a preteen ministry this past year, back in February, I believe it was. Our church also launched a 3rd service on Monday nights, which is really unique and has been awesome, but also a bit of a challenge. I'm learning a lot with that. Our preteen ministry is in a completely separate building, so navigating some of that has been really interesting as well. And just, life in general. My youngest daughter graduated from college and, just keeping busy with work stuff and all that we have going on at CCC. So good things, good things.
Yeah. And if anybody, a lot of people may not realize we work at the same church. So you've got a terrible next gen pastor as a boss.
No,
but I have a great elementary director and it was crazy when we launched our preteen environment, as you know, mostly for you, because we had the Monday night service, as you mentioned, but that was 3 weeks before the launch of the the preteen, which was not how it was supposed to go.
Exactly.
But before we get to some of that story, tell us, why did you want to start a separate preteen ministry environment, whatever you want to call that, to begin with?
Well, I guess, for years, I guess I've been at CCC for almost since launch. So what's that? Almost 13 years. And we've always had all of our elementary kids in one environment, one big space. We call it the warehouse. It's a big room plus a smaller room off of it that is separated by a dividing curtain. And we've always had kindergarten through fifth grade in that space. And it worked fine. And, we did what Orange kind of suggests, where you work toward attracting that older fifth grade boy, I guess. And if you get them, then hopefully everyone else comes up. But over the years, I just noticed more and more that the gap was bigger, and keeping kindergartners and fifth graders engaged is very different. And I felt like our fourth and fifth grade, especially fifth grade, started to check out. More of those students were showing up in our main service. And I don't know that it was necessarily the programming, but I think it was the length of time they were in that same space. 6 years is a long time. So it just felt like they were sort of ready for something new, but obviously not ready for our student ministry programming. And anyway, so that was always something I wanted to do to separate it out, but we just never had the space to do it. And then I went to the Orange Conference back in 2017, right when Dan Scott had released his Caught in Between book. And I went to his breakout, and I remember coming back and saying, we got to figure out a way to do this. Maybe just split the room in half. And, and it didn't happen right away. We couldn't make that work. But then fortunately, we were able to lease some space right next to our office building. And when I heard that, and, you came to me and said, I think we can put 45 in there, which is the name of our preteen environment, obviously fourth, fifth grade. And so that was really exciting to be able to move toward that. And we started working on it, I think, last summer, with the hope to launch in October, was it? And that didn't happen. Yeah. It kept getting put off, construction delays and such. And so it wasn't ideal to launch in February, but it's been a really great thing. I'm so glad we've done it. And I've just seen it help so much. These fourth and fifth graders seem to have sort of checked back in, I guess. I love that tagline from Dan Scott's book about engage your preteens before they check out. And we definitely were seeing them check out. So I feel like some of them have come back from that main service thing they were doing. And I just feel like we're offering them something just for them. And I love that. I love being able to do that. And I also noticed too, it helped our kindergarten and through third graders, because those little kindergartners, I think they're pretty intimidated when they walk in the door. And I noticed, like, during worship, they're more engaged. They're more free to be who they are, because maybe their fourth and fifth graders aren't there making them feel silly, for dancing and move. Because, those fourth, fifth graders sit in the back and don't do much when they're in that environment with everyone. So anyway, it's helped on both sides. I think it's been really, really a great.
Yeah. Wasn't there one kid who even talked about couldn't wait till the fourth, fifth graders got out? I don't remember who that was.
I don't either, but I do remember.
I thought that was funny. And we didn't even talk a lot about this. I think in some ways we just kind of knew we wanted to do it for fourth and fifth grade. But a lot of times preteen ministry is fifth, sixth, or something like that. In your mind, why was this not sixth grade? Why was it just fourth and fifth?
Well, I think because we wanted to stay in line with what our school districts do. And so middle school in our area, our region of the country, is 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And our student ministry follows that. So we just wanted to kind of keep in line with all of that. So 4th and 5th grade seemed to be where a good split would be. Third graders still are young enough that they're okay, I think, to be with those kindergarten. I think in the school system, sometimes you think of kindergarten first and second as primary, and then third, fourth, and fifth kind of lumped together. But I've noticed the third graders love having the opportunity to be the oldest ones in the space and rule it kind of. And we do still split by gender at third grade. So even though kindergarten through third grade is together, once you hit third grade, you split by gender. So that's been pretty good too, is just to start that. It's almost like a primer for them before they come down to 45, where they will, I say down because if you were to see our building, we have a building kind of up the hill a little bit and go down the hill to go to the second building where 4th, 5th grade is. But anyway, so that split boys and girls helps them get ready too. And it just hopefully matches our school district, like I said.
Yeah. Not everybody gets to do that, because I know there are a lot of people, you probably know leaders as well, where it's like they have different age groups in their school district. One school 7th, 8th, one 6th, 7th, 8th, one's, but we do have that luxury. Even private schools are 6th, 7th, 8th around here. So it's really nice to keep it all in one. I also think too, there's something about our middle school ministry has had really good momentum and critical mass and all that. And to pull all the 6th graders out and put them in 5th grade would have changed that, So I like that we do that 4th, 5th. And they're certainly a little younger, than some if you do 5th, 6th or whatever. But tell us what was the plan for somebody who's thinking about doing this? What was like the idea, the goal, a couple of details about it? I mean, we'll talk about what the environment looked like and how you prepared volunteers, but just overall, what was the plan?
Well, like I said, we were going to launch back in October. And so once we got that space available to us, we started looking at the room and deciding, what elements we wanted to have. I absolutely recommend the book Caught in Between because that was just so important for me. I read that. I also talked to a lot of leaders. I made phone calls and Zoom calls and all of that with leaders around the country that had already had an existing preteen environment and said, what are you doing? What's working? What's not? What do you suggest? One of the things we really wanted to be careful about was that we weren't stepping on the toes of middle school. So one of the things I really wanted to do was make sure that we provided something unique and specific to this phase of life, this preteen 4th, 5th grade experience and phase, but I didn't want it to look exactly like student ministry. And we can talk more about that when we get to environment. But for example, student ministry, they get to play outside. They have a gaga pit. They have 9 square in the air or whatever that thing's called. We don't have that for 45. We have some other games that sort of also are included in student ministry, but we were really careful about how we did it and what it looked like, just so that they would have something that the kindergarten through 3rd grade didn't have, but yet preserve a few things for them to anticipate and look forward to when they get to 5th grade. So that was sort of all of my thinking when I went into planning the environment. We use the Orange curriculum. So on many levels, the plan for curriculum was set in place for us. We used the so-and-so show and all of that was just, it's so great. And the kids have loved it. The leaders love it. We all laugh hysterically. The video's amazing. So, my curriculum was sort of set in place. I didn't have to do much planning with that. But as far as the environment, it was just about what is it going to look like? How can we make it unique and different for them, but also not step on the toes of students?
Mm-hmm. And that is important. I think it's great to have things that kids and students can look forward to, whether it's trips, things like that. That's really important.
Yep.
And our plan, just for anybody who's thinking, exactly what did this look like or whatever, it was to offer it at every service, which was we had 2 services in the fall. And as you know, Lisa, we've had like every service plan. We've had 2, we've had 3, we've had 3 on Sunday, really tight together, or now we're doing 2 on Sunday, 1 Monday night. But the idea was we're going to offer it every time, even though Monday night is a much smaller service. Our idea was we're going to offer it at each time. And if we talked about, you mentioned earlier that it was in a different building.
Yes.
So that was another hurdle. So talk a little bit about that and even what we had to prepare for that.
Yep. That was interesting to think about because we had to really think through the lens of a parent. We worked with our frontline or welcome teams to make sure we knew parking and how signage, all of that. We wanted it to be really clear. Our church is definitely for people who are not a part of any church. So we wanted to think through the lens of someone coming on our campus, so to speak, for the first time. What is that going to look like? How do they know to get to a preteen ministry? And so thinking through all of those assimilation things for new people, our welcome team, we wanted to make sure that in our main building, they knew if someone was new, they could walk them down to this other building, even because if they missed the signage. We have these huge feather signs. We did all of that, but obviously some people come in the front door. They don't see that. And we're in the back of the building. So thinking through how are we going to get kids down there? We had to think through security. They have to cross a road to get there. So we were considering, welcome mats that had our logo on it to lead them the way and we needed to have security out there or someone, at least a crossing guard of sorts. And then once they were in the building, how did that work with our printers and all of the things that we got do we have the same name tags. I know a lot of preteen environments, people don't make kids sign in with a name tag anymore because it just helps them feel a little older. That wasn't going to be an option for us since we were in a separate building. We felt like parents still needed to be able to show us a security tag. So what did that look like? And how could we make it match what we did up the hill at our other environment? So yes, I would say the biggest thing that we had to think through were security and just being able to help people understand where to go and how it worked. One of the things, and I didn't have a lot to do with this, I know you probably were leading this more than me, but the idea of parents being able to check their kids in both environments if they have multiple children throughout our church. So if you have a preschooler, you can check them in down at our other building at 45 and bring them up the hill, or vice versa. You can check everybody in at the same stations. So, that was some of the stuff we had to work through and talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the space we used was next to our office. Like, we leased more space. We have like this building that we own, and then in the next building, in the next lot, we lease office space, and we put this next to it. I know a lot of people, they're in the same position we were in a few years ago, where it's like, I'd love to do this, but where?
Right.
On the roof, like, I don't have anywhere to do this. And that was true for us. And we just couldn't do it until we were able to get more leased space. But let's shift gears and talk a little bit about volunteers. How did you prepare and rally volunteers to get ready for this big move? And you're gonna have to get some volunteers to move to serve in 45, and kind of splitting the team a little bit. And that could sound bad, but like, how did you get them on board with the vision and excited about it? Was it easy? Was there any pushback? What was that like?
Well, from a small group leader standpoint, it was really easy. These leaders were connected to those kids. They'd made great relationships and connections, so they were going to go wherever those kids were. And I'm really grateful. I have some awesome small group leaders. And so that was an easy thing. And if anything, because we had rallied and cast the vision for it and everything back in September, everyone was sort of like, when is it going to happen? We kept having those delays. So it was really exciting to finally get there. And I remember that first Sunday, just, the energy and everything of everyone that was involved. From a large group standpoint, that was very challenging because I work our large group in our K-5 environment. Back when we had that, we have 4 teams. So we'd have a host, storyteller, worship leader, and a tech person, and then a producer or coach over that team. And those teams serve at all of our services once every 4 weeks. Well, I had to double that, is what I thought when I first started 45. So I was recruiting large group leaders left and right and training them all throughout the fall. And large group is a different animal because, it takes somebody who really enjoys being up front and is dynamic and enjoys communicating to a group publicly. So finding that was a little difficult. I know. Thank you, Nick. You've jumped in and helped fill some of the holes. And so I was able to find a few people, and I built 2 separate teams, I guess is what I would say, for our large group environments for 45 and for K-3. And it wasn't that people weren't excited to go to one place or another, but it just was getting the actual volume of people I needed. So that was a bit of a challenge. What I've learned though is, because of the way, and we can talk about this when we get to environment, but because of the way our environment looks and is the way it feels, I didn't need as many leaders as I originally thought. So I was able now to get away with a host and a tech person, and I can explain what we've done with worship in there as well. It's not ideal, but it's how the direction we've gone for now. So that helped a lot to be able, and then using the video, I was able to remove the storyteller piece. So that was good. I have one leader who has not exactly enjoyed hosting in that environment as much as in K-3, because K-3 has a lot more media and production and lighting and sound, and she just really enjoys the energy of that versus 45, the preteen environment's a little bit more intimate from a large group standpoint. So, there's some of that. I had to think through who's going to be good for this age group. So I think I've answered, but I feel like there was another piece of your question I might have missed. Sorry. I went kind of on a tangent about volunteers.
Yeah, I think my memory is they were all mostly excited about it. I think there's probably a little bit of, oh man, I'm used to seeing that person every week, and now that I lead 3rd grade and they lead 4th, we won't see each other as much every week. It's going to be 2 different things. So there's probably a little bit of that. But other than that, people were excited. The volunteers were all about it. I mean, once it started getting delayed, they were just more like, hey, when's this going to happen? And of course, it just, ended up where we had to launch Monday night and 3 weeks later launch this. So there was more of a challenge recruiting volunteers than even just launching this. You had to just launch Monday, then launch this 3 weeks later, which is challenging for sure. But tell us about, let's talk about worship first, and then let's hit the environment.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to tell you one thing that was really interesting that I did forget when it came to volunteers. Separating buildings, and I don't know if anybody has this issue, but my coaches really relied on one another if one of them was going to be out. So let's say we have a 9:15 and 11 o'clock service. And so if my 9:15 small group coach was going to be out, she would just ask the 11 o'clock coach to kind of cover for her that day, and vice versa. They really worked as a team. Well, that was no longer possible since they were in separate buildings and they couldn't just cover all of the age groups. So that actually was a catalyst for me to be able to say to those coaches, hey, you need to be thinking about an apprentice. So someone on your team who can cover for you when you're out. And that has been such a win, an unexpected win for us, because they had to think about someone on their team who leads and shows leadership and would be able to cover and run a circle up and, just be there. It's not ideal because they're also running a small group. So they're not free to do all the things that a coach would do, but it's just great. That apprenticeship piece kind of came about out of necessity more than, my vision for, let's apprentice leaders. Anyway.
And if people listen to this podcast regularly, they probably know all about what a coach is. But in our world, it'd be like, you had like a kindergarten through second grade coach at 9:15, and then the third through fifth, and then one could cover both, if one was out.
Right.
And you still have that. It's just that now it's a coach over fourth and fifth, and they're in the other building. So they can help with kindergarten through third. So in case people are wondering like how that works. Tell us about worship and what that looks like, some changes you made, and then we could talk about what it looks like, the environment. Okay.
Yeah. So worship has been a challenge for me in general when we were all together, K-5, because as I said at the beginning of this, fifth grade boys, especially, they kind of stand in the back. They don't want to be involved. And we've done a lot to try to change that. We put in those Fortnite dances. We've done simpler moves. We, really tried. We choreograph our own stuff so that it's not so dancey. And we got some kids were engaged, but not really. So I was excited when we got to a new environment that they would be all by themselves and they wouldn't be too weirded out by it. And, now we could really, really do a great job with worship. And it's been a challenge. I think it might just be this age group, it's just they're they don't want to be seen yet in some ways. They sit back and they're a little nervous or shy or timid. Some are not, but most of them are. So what we did, we started with worship leaders. So an adult or a student, a teenager that would come in and lead from the front and introduce the song and teach the moves. But one of the things I got a lot of feedback from our small group leaders was to start using worship music that we would hear in our main services to sort of prep them for because when kids in our environment leave fifth grade, they begin going to the main service with their families because they go to student ministry at night on Sunday nights. So a lot of our small group leaders were saying, what if we just did a video with no motions of more of a slower, reflective song? So we decided to do one song that was active, that they knew from when they were in the other environment, and they could do the moves if they wanted to, and the other song would be this quiet, reflective song. And that was fine. I think the song choices are right now, but because we don't have a stage or anything like that in our environment, we have sort of a banner, a focal wall, because I'm a big believer in that, a place where teaching happens and the game happens and all, but it's very intimate. Our room is smaller, so everyone's very close together. And I felt like the worship leader felt awkward and the kids felt awkward because everyone can see each other. So we've shifted now to having students in the environment. So fourth and fifth grade students, I went to each small group and I asked, hey, would you like to be a part of this team that gets up and just leads worship? And one person a week gets a mic and they get to just introduce the song and say, we're going to do the motions. You can do them or not. So it's not perfect. It depends on the student. Some students are so dynamic already in fourth or fifth grade and they are great in front. And some are a little shy, but I feel like they've got some ownership with it and they are enjoying that role. And I was in last week watching and I thought, it feels a lot like our main service where people are listening and they're singing, but it's not that crazy. If you were up the hill at K-3, they're jumping and dancing and engaged and shouting, and 45, it's a lot calmer. It's just a little bit more mellow, but part of me thinks that's okay. It's reflective and they're participating at their comfort level. The other thing I tried to implement too was originally I had the groups choose the fun song, the loud, crazy song that had motions. I would go to each group and say, okay, for this month, you get to choose the worship songs. And they would tell me. So I was trying to give them some ownership there. It was a lot to manage to keep track of who wanted what songs and what group had already, shared. So I haven't done that as much the last couple of months. I've just chosen for them. But so that's sort of where we are with worship. It's a work in progress.
They do sing. That's the difference. Like even when it is more mellow or if it's a slower song or whatever, it is interesting because they do sing. You totally hear it. You totally hear that. And so even if it is as amped up as what is in K-3, they're still just as engaged, which is great.
I think that's what I had to learn. I had to learn to change my expectation that just because they're not jumping and, doing all the dance moves doesn't mean they're not engaged. And that's been helpful for me. So,
yeah, that's good. What's the environment look like? You mentioned a little bit about focal wall, no stage, all that. Like, tell us a little bit about, and we can include some pictures in the show notes, but describe that for us. And what were we going for? And what were you going for?
Yeah, we wanted to make it kind of more of like a lounge environment. We definitely wanted furniture for kids. In our K-3 environment, they sit on the floor in circle carpets. And originally, I thought through a lot of different options. And I originally went to when they come to large group, they'll still be on the floor. But in talking with you, I kind of learned and opened my mind to the idea of them sitting in furniture during large group. And because the room is smaller, it works for sure. They're not that spread out. It's not like they're laying on sofas in the back corners of the room or anything. So what we did was, I do love, again, and anytime you've heard me talk about environment, I think a focal wall is really important. Just when you walk in the door and you see that, it says something's happening here, and it, gives you it sets the tone for what's going on in that room. So we have a big banner. It's 3 pieces, and the back center piece says 45. It's got our logo on it. It actually, because we share space with students, that banner can come off of the structure, and then we put one on for students. The 2 side banners match both my 45 banner and our student banner. So that's kind of cool because it's just that one piece that comes off and on, and the other 2 stay the same. And like you said, we can put a picture of that. So that's our focal wall. And then we have 4 groupings. So 4th grade girls, 4th grade guys, 5th grade girls, 5th grade guys. And we do have a carpet that sort of anchors their space. And then we have a sofa and some chairs and some of those ottomans. The things that double as seats. And I'd say we get about 10 seats around the circle. Not everybody has 10 in their group, but that's about what we have. So those 4 groupings are set out in front of the banner, on the left and right sides. And then the center banner, in front of the center of the banner, is open for that host or worship leader team. And, the game happens there. Then in the back of the room, we have some foosball tables. We have a shuffleboard table, which is new to us. It was donated and it has become the huge hit. Kids love it. We have an area with a chalkboard where they can draw and write on the chalkboard, whatever, and we have 2 TVs with some video games. And I went retro. This was one of those things, again, where student ministry has PlayStation and all the newest games. So I didn't want to step on that. So we use all the retro Nintendo, Mario and all of that. They seem to like it. So interestingly enough, they're not using the video games as much as they love the foosball and shuffleboard. And so those self-contained games, ping pong wouldn't have it. First of all, we have it for students, but that ball going everywhere, that was something a leader I spoke with when I was planning talked about, and she said, do self-contained games. So we also have a snack shelf, and we have a game shelf, so they can come in and choose a board game and bring it back to their group and play with their small group during that social opening time. And then we have snacks, which is a big hit. That's been amazing because we joke because, in preschool they have snacks, they have Cheerios or they have Goldfish, and then they come to K-3 and there's no snacks. And then they go to 45 and there's snacks again. But, so it's
middle
fun.
School, they have actual meals. The middle school books are full dinner at night. But different times, so that's funny. So it sounds like at this point, only K-3 is just getting punished.
I know. Poor thing.
That's funny. So what additional, you mentioned, what the environment looks like, which I think is important. And before I move on, one of the great things you did in the process was you talked to a lot of people, and you just referenced that. How many people did you talk to, and how helpful was that? I mean, I know it was really helpful, but tell us about that.
Yeah, it was really helpful. I would probably at least 5, maybe more. I think you gave me a few names. I had a few names that I've met through the Orange Conference and things like that. So anyone who was doing preteen, I got in touch with. I spoke with Dan Scott, and we just he did a whole live video thing on his Caught in Between Facebook group. And I actually, when you were asking about rallying the volunteers, I invited all of our volunteers to join that. And the good thing about live Facebook videos is they're there. So even if you didn't catch it live, they could go back and watch. And I know I had a few who really interacted with all of that and learned from that as well. But the leaders across, they give me these little ideas like I know you laugh at me about this idea, Nick, but our sticker ball is one of my favorite things.
They do love it.
I know. This one leader told me she started a sticker ball for their ID tags. And I thought, how cool is that? Because kids don't want to feel like they're children. They don't want to feel like they're little. And up in our K-3 environment, they had these stickers and their parent had to match it. So now we've created this it's getting pretty big now. It's a ball where we put their stickers every week. So when they leave the environment, they turn that in and they, put that on the sticker ball. It's growing and growing and growing, and it's just become a thing. It's our 45 thing. So that was really fun. I got that idea from someone else. And just, talk to people about what to include, how to make it unique. Snacks was another thing I learned was a way to help make it unique. My daughter, one of the other cool kind of unique things that we've been able to do, my daughter came up with this idea that we have an iPad with an Instagram poll sort of, or question of the day. And they answer that I don't have the technology to have them answer it right on the iPad, but it sits and it's the question, and they either answer by putting a ping pong ball in a jar on one side or the other, yes or no, or whatever the answers are, or they write it on a slip of paper if it's an actual question that they have to answer. So for example, snow cones or ice cream. And then they would choose and take their ping pong ball and put it in either side. And it looks like an Instagram poll. And that's been kind of fun for them. I see them all try to answer it on the iPad. And then I'm like, no, we don't have that technology yet. You have to go. So there's
probably something. Maybe there's something for that. Yeah. I'm thinking about, those things that are unique and different. And I'm wondering if we've hit all of them. Tell us, well, there's more even about the environment, the furniture, how it's set up, some of that. You said there's no stage, 3 backdrop banners. I mean, and the pictures will help people get at that. I know you talk to a lot of people who have kids around tables, right? And they sit around tables up high, which we definitely considered. I don't know if anybody said they have kids on carpets, but we considered all that stuff and, landed with the furniture. It's kind of like furniture group, like each small group has their own little furniture circle. But they're all close together, like you said. I mean, that's probably why it works. If they were spread out, you probably would have kids sleeping on the back.
Right. If the room were bigger, I probably would maybe have some sort of elevated platform, only because, especially for worship, I feel like it does sort of create a little bit of separation where kids would feel a little more free and we would be leading them more. But I don't know. I go back and forth about it because I really love the intimacy that this creates, where there is no stage and there's no light rig and it's not this big media production thing. It's more of just a communicator who can move throughout, because our 4 circle carpets and settings for small groups are close together. That communicator can kind of really connect with those kids, and he's on eye level with them. And so I've been pushing for the stage for a long time, but sometimes being down there the other day and watching, I was like, this actually works. It's very intimate and connected. And I feel like the kids feel like they belong and it's their space. And like I said, a lot of that I got from these leaders I talked to and heard just, what was working. If it was a bigger room like the warehouse, I probably would have some sort of seating arrangement for them during large group, but not, those chairs, because they would be on the perimeter of the room probably.
Yeah, you had to be calling them back in, getting them to pay attention. That to me, when I host in that environment, and maybe it is because they're all so close and it's not like it's on a stage and there's a big separation. But they pay attention better than in the old environment. You know what I mean? Like, so there is that, because the old environment, if you had you could have 80 kids in there easily, if not more. And sometimes the older ones would be on the walls, in the back.
Yep.
And so they wouldn't seem like they were as engaged. Whereas here, it's not like that at all because they're all so close and,
right.
It's a lot easier.
Well, and one of the things that's been interesting too about that environment, we as a church kind of have a real continuity within our space and how we decorate and all of that. And so some of that, the furniture we chose, I know you and I, it was quite a process because we were looking at certain things that looked a little bit more, I'd say, youth, ministry oriented. And I was worried about it getting ruined and all of that. But our senior pastor and the person that was helping us with decor really were kind of wanting to use some of the furniture we have in our lobby, which is a little bit more, I don't know if I would say formal, but the chairs, they swivel. And I know I was very worried about that for many reasons. One, I thought they'd break. And two, I thought no one's going to pay attention. They're just going to be spinning on these chairs. And I have been pleasantly surprised. We kind of set the expectation up front about how you need to behave and, how you need to be engaged. And I'm not going to lie, there's kids that are laying on the chair and spinning, not spinning fast, but turning back and forth. But, it's close enough that you can grab them and, not physically, but kind of grab their attention and say, hey, zone in here. So that it was a pleasant surprise for me because I was originally really nervous about, wow, this furniture's it's really nice. It's going to get ruined. And it's actually been a win. So, and we did, our pastor loves orange, which works for us. He's a Tennessee Volunteer fan. So orange works for him and for us. So we painted the ceiling orange and that just drew the whole room. It just brought it all together. So we have these, orange accents and orange ceiling and the banner has a lot of orange in it. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. The orange ceiling is definitely unique. And when the idea came up, we were like, maybe I don't either. Like, is that, and some of it was even like, is it going to work well? I mean, it's drop ceiling. Like when you spray it, is that going to be fine? But it's turned out really well. It does look great. When kids are younger, they like the swivel chairs spinning around though. Cause my kids who are not old enough to be in that's like the first thing they do is they get in there
right.
and that thing. So maybe some of it helps that they're a little bit older. So what have you learned? It's been, what has it been? 6 months, something like that. So what have you learned?
I've learned a lot about, like I said, worship, that kids can engage without it having to be this crazy hyped up thing. They really actually enjoy the large group songs. The main service songs that we've chosen. I had a parent tell me the other day that her child said, hey, we sing this. It was on the radio. I think it was a song that they would have heard on the radio and Christian radio. And he was like, we sing this in our environment. And they sang it together in the car. And that was really a cool moment for me because if I had gone with my original plan, which was to keep worship the same or, consistent with what we did in K-3, that moment wouldn't have happened for them. So I feel like that's been a pleasant surprise. I've learned a lot about navigating a second building, I need to duplicate or what's that called? Replace myself. That's been a big lesson because I'm hardly down there. So I'm really considering putting a director in place. It'd be a volunteer position for us, but I'm putting someone in place over the 4th, 5th grade environment because I can't be in 2 places at once. So learning how to navigate my own schedule was a bit of a challenge, but I think I'm getting there. I have some plans for the fall as to how to work that out. And I've just learned that the small group connection in this environment, oh man, it has just skyrocketed. What's happening for those small groups and their leaders, I don't know, just taking them out and giving them this unique experience that is just theirs. It's just sort of everything is working better from a connection standpoint. While I would say I'd like to work a little bit on the large group aspect and get more leaders to that, and that's not my greatest win just yet, the small group connections have really, really amped up since we separated space. So I think that's been really cool.
Mm-hmm. What would you do differently?
Like I said, I've toyed with the idea of a focal wall. I might have the space be even bigger just because I'd love to spread out a little bit more. But I probably would. I'm actually working on doing a few things differently, and that is restructuring the large group volunteer schedule and all of that. One thing, because it is a smaller environment, and I'm learning this from our Monday night service, which is very small. I have people that can work in multiple roles. So a small group leader can actually run tech in this environment because it's basically a mic and pro presenter. It's not, lighting and all of that. So I was originally planning this huge large group schedule and structure for all these different roles when really there's some roles that can be doubled. I can have even a small group leader if I needed to be the large group person. And you and I have had this conversation. On some levels, that's really hard for me because it feels like I'm taking a step backwards or something. But, we have this high level production and then all of a sudden it's not like that. And I think what I've learned and what I'm doing differently is recognizing that's okay. This age group maybe doesn't need all of that. They need connection. And so it's okay if I have people doing multiple things, and it actually saves my team a little bit because I'm not killing multiple volunteers to be there in all these different roles that someone else can fill. So that's definitely something I'm working towards doing differently in the fall.
Yeah. I think what you're saying there taps into something that's important for, I guess, all leaders to know. When you have multiple services as a church, especially like in our case where we've got 2 on Sunday that are about the same size and they're good full services. I mean, it's the prime time when everybody wants to attend. But then you get a Monday, and a good Monday night service, from what we'd heard and is true of our experience, would be like 10 to 15% of your church. So you could be a large church, but your Monday night might have 150 people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting about that is, our church was a plant and we help plant other churches. So we see this all the time. It's like you have to be able to lead that campus or that church plant or that service that's only 150 people a little bit differently than you lead the service of 600 or the campus of 1,000, Mm-hmm. And in kids ministry, what happens is, like, church wide, that might be like our Monday night service. It's the Monday night service. So the service itself probably needs a little bit different. As you know, we pull curtains to change the size of the room. We do everything else mostly the same, but sometimes even things we'll do to celebrate or have fun before the service look a little bit different. You know what I mean? And now everything else might be the same, and church-wide doesn't impact small groups, right? They're the same, all that stuff. With kids ministry, it's all in one. So now it's almost like having a different, campus or kids ministry where it's just different. We get so many fewer kids on Monday night than we do in the morning. And 45 is probably a little bit like that. We get good attendance at our 45 environment, but it's not going to be the same as when they were all together and it was all of those kids in one room with that critical mass and one large group team. And so that's probably just a helpful thing for people to think about, that you have to lead it. There's some things that should still be the same. A lot of things actually should still be the same, but there's probably a few things that should be different just to make that size. Like, you got to lead it as a church of 200 before it can be a church of 400, before it can be to 800 or whatever. So anyway, just a random thought I had as you were saying that.
No, and I think you're tapping into what I was thinking about when you asked me that. I was kind of like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about what I would do differently, but because I am in the process of making some changes, I guess. But one of the things I definitely recognize is our Monday night service. We can't run the game the way we do on Sunday, because a game on Sunday that requires, 2 teams of 8 or 2 teams of 10, when our Monday night service maybe has 8 kids on a, 5 kids, whatever it may be. Sometimes we might even only have 1 child in that environment on a Monday night. And so having those leaders be incredibly flexible and able to think through, and I am tapping into, okay, who do I have in there that can lead them and say, let's think about how you can do this game or this activity with just this amount of kids. How can we, revamp it or whatever the word would be to make it, restructure it so that it works. But yet we're still going to play a game, and maybe the game just is a different game or that kind of thing. So just being flexible, I think, has been a good thing for me, because I like it to look a certain way and I want it to be easy to, say, this is how we do it. The end. It's on a piece of paper and we're good. And that's not been the case. I've had to really learn how to kind of open my mind to what could work, differently, and how can this look?
Well, and just try it. I mean, it's like, we don't know. You talk to a lot of people. We both know people that do this, but still, you just got to try some things and be ready, like you're doing. Good leader, you just adjust. You try something, you adjust. If it works, you stick with it. If it doesn't, we tweak it again. And so it's only been 6 months. I feel like a lot has changed in the tweaks department. You know what I mean? There's lots of little things that have changed, and that's been good. It's been good.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add as we wrap up?
Oh, just, I'd love, if anybody's planning on this, I'd love to talk to you. I don't have all the answers, but we are still, like, everything's an experiment in a way. Mark Patterson says that a lot. And I live by that. So I'd love to brainstorm and chat and share what we've learned. But I'm really excited about it. I'm excited that we're able to provide something unique for this phase of life for kids in 4th and 5th grade, and hope it continues to be successful. So,
yeah. How can people connect with you?
You can connect through my blog. I have a blog, readysetsunday.com, through email, and I'm on social media as Lisa Molite. So Instagram. I don't do much with Twitter, Facebook. Yeah, definitely find me there.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming back on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
Well, I tell you what, Lisa did a great job launching our preteen ministry this year. Right after, just like we talked about, 3 weeks after launching a Monday night service. I mean, wow, that is certainly not how you draw it up. But she and her team did an amazing job launching Monday night service and then coming right back, launching 45. And it's been a great environment. It's been a great environment for sure. I'm really excited, as this fall will be the first time that we get to move kids up into this environment, to start the school year, since it didn't launch on time last year. And so I'm excited to see what those kids think of it, how excited they're going to be to get there. That's going to be a lot of fun. A few action items I think of coming out of that interview. One is to get Dan Scott's book, Caught in Between. It's just a great book for sure. Get that. Even if you're not launching a preteen ministry, the information in there is really, really helpful. Another action item is kind of like Lisa did, maybe talk with 5 leaders. If you're launching a preteen ministry, talk with 5 leaders about how they launched theirs and what they learned and what they would do differently. But maybe you're not launching a preteen ministry. Maybe you're going to do something different to minister to them. Maybe it has nothing to do with that, but you can gain so much from talking to other leaders that I'd encourage you to talk to 5 other leaders, even if you're not sure what you want to ask them. Ask them how they recruit volunteers or plan for a large group or empower their small group leaders or whatever it might be. You can learn so much just having conversations with other leaders. And most leaders I know of, especially in the next gen world in kids and student ministry, are very open-handed and willing to share. And then the third action step I think of is, can you make something different or unique for kids as they get older? Again, maybe you don't have a separate preteen ministry or you're not launching one, but even if you aren't, is there something you can do that's unique when kids come into kindergarten or when they are in 4th grade or when they move out to go to middle school, whatever that is? I just think there's power in giving them things to look forward to that they can't have now, but they're going to get when they get older. You know what I mean? I think that's really, really powerful. I was actually talking to my son about that the other day at this camp that he goes to every summer. He knows he can't get on the one ropes course until he's in 2nd grade, I think. And I felt bad for him because he was sad that he couldn't do that. But also part of me was thinking, no, that's good. And I told him that's good. That's something you can look forward to that you're going to get to do when you get older. As I mentioned in the beginning, you can get my notes on preteens and for parents and notes from Dan's book. In the email exclusive, just go to nickblevins.com/episode 158. That'll have all the show notes and links. Plus, you can subscribe to get those email exclusives. And then also there'll be a link there if you want to get that new PDF resource I created about events, planning church events, 15 best practices. You can get that there as well. Well, there you have it. Thanks for listening. If you're launching a preteen ministry or if you have recently, I would love to hear about it. Email me at nick@nickblevins.com. Tell me how it's going, any questions you might have. If I can help you out, I'd love to do that. But as usual, I hope this episode is helpful, that you can take this, you can apply it, and work on your ministry this week. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.